Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to my friends and colleagues. A special welcome to broadcasters and press on this beautiful bank holiday Monday. Warm welcome to you all. So glad you could all join us. And without much further ado, it's my great pleasure to hand over to the National Secretary of the Scottish National Party, Lorna Finn.
I'm happy to confirm today that at the close of nominations at midday, I received one valid nomination, and I'm delighted to confirm that our new party leader is John Swinney.
Friends, first of all, can I thank Lorna and the party staff for the professional way this leadership process has been run at such short notice, enabling the Scottish National Party to get back on the front foot so quickly. A year ago, well, even a week ago, I didn't think that my future would involve standing here accepting the leadership of the Scottish National Party. Things have turned out differently. And before I say any more about my leadership, I want to pay tribute to Humza Yousaf. He's conducted himself throughout the last year with grace and with dignity in some acutely difficult circumstances. In particular, his moral leadership on the issue of Gaza has been a light in these dark times. Our party must continue and will continue to be a light. We must continue to illuminate hope, fight for international justice, and be willing to stand up for what we believe to be correct. That is what Humza Yousaf did. I know that Humza will continue to make a substantial contribution to the public life of Scotland, and I want to thank him for all that he has done as our party leader and as our First Minister. Today is the beginning of a new chapter in our party's history, a chapter that will be about coming together, uniting and dedicating ourselves to the service of Scotland. I want to express my heartfelt thanks to the many party members, the many elected members at Westminster and at Holyrood, and in our council chambers around the country for their encouragement for me to stand for the party leadership. My decision to stand for the leadership is not born out of long-held ambition, but rather a profound sense of duty to my party and to my country. Now, I know there's some controversy that I'm the only candidate to stand for the leadership. Perhaps not surprisingly, I take a very different view to that. For me, the fact that I am the only candidate demonstrates that the Scottish National Party is coming back together again now. I promised that I would create an inclusive and unified team, and I will do that. I promised I would enable open and respectful dialogue in the SNP, and I will do that. I promised to make sure that the SNP looks outward to the people of our country and not inward amongst ourselves, and I will do that. I've had the privilege of contributing a significant amount to the SNP story. In that time, I've seen the lows and the highs of our modern political history as a party. And over those highs and lows, one thing has been clear to me time after time. Scotland wins when the SNP wins. Yes, we faced a rough time recently as a party, but remember what's been happening during that rough time. The Scottish Child Payment is lifting 100,000 children out of poverty. Free university tuition opens a better future to record numbers of young people from poorer backgrounds. And the massive expansion of childcare is giving children from every background a better start in life. So, however tough it has recently been for the SNP, never ever forget that at the same time, SNP policies and actions are transforming lives here and now in our country. As I begin my leadership of the party I love, I want to speak not just to everyone here at this SNP gathering. I want to speak to each and every person in this country. To those who know me and those who don't. To those who support the SNP and those who never have. And to those who support independence and those that we are yet to convince. I want to set out the vision I have of our nation's future. I said when I launched my candidacy for leadership that I wanted to create a modern, diverse, dynamic Scotland. Today, I'm standing in a building that speaks of that future. It's the Advanced Research Centre of the University of Glasgow. Here in the heart of one of our oldest universities in Europe, research into the newest leading-edge technologies push back the boundaries of what is possible. Experience and innovation combined. History and modernity together, forging a new future. That is the perfect vision for Scotland. A country with a depth of history can blend the old and the new and forge it together into the best future for herself. A country where people have good jobs, the climate is protected, the vulnerable are lifted up, and opportunity is available for all. That is the chapter, the new chapter that I offer. One built on experience, on skills honed over decades. Every moment of my journey devoted to building the new Scotland that I believe is possible. Later this week, Scotland will choose a new First Minister. In putting my name forward, it's important that I set out what kind of First Minister I will be. I spoke last week about unifying our party and about what we can do for Scotland together. I believe the same is true of our Parliament. In 2021, the share of the vote commanded by Labour, the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats all fell. The SNP recorded our best ever share of the constituency vote. In fact, we won more votes and a higher share of the votes in the constituency ballot than any party in the 25-year history of devolution. That is our mandate, but it does not give us a monopoly on good ideas. It means that we have the right, in fact we have the duty, to form the government. But it does not mean that we can stop listening to people and voices outside our party. The polarisation of politics does not serve our country well. Too often, too many people are too busy fighting to win battles when we should be seeking solutions to problems. That is what I pledge I will seek to do. I will reach out to everyone willing to join with us in good faith and seek compromises that serve our nation well. That does not mean that debate will end, far from it. But it does mean that should I be elected, I will first seek common ground, to join together in coalitions of the willing and solve the problems that our country faces. We need to stop shouting at each other and talk to each other. More than that, actually, we need to listen. And as First Minister, I will do exactly that. And friends, I believe recent events show that this approach works. Last week, I met with Kate Forbes. We came together and discussed the shared ambitions we have for our country and how best we can go forward. I welcome Kate's support for my leadership. And over the weekend, I reached out to my party colleague Graham McCormick. He wanted to stand for election so he could be heard. So I listened and assured him that the views of party members up and down the country will be properly listened to. The simple lesson is that dialogue can bring us to points of agreement and strength. And that is my message today to every party in the Scottish Parliament. Focus on solutions to problems, and you will find no one more willing to listen than me. Together, we can make a real difference to the lives of people in Scotland. That's the job we have all been sent to Parliament to do. Of course, I believe this country could do more if we had the powers of a normal, independent nation, the powers of independence. The cost of living crisis and the damaging impact of Brexit are two examples of Westminster decisions that are bad for Scotland. They demonstrate why Scotland needs to have independence to make our own decisions and create our best future. I will always seek, with respect and courtesy, to persuade people of the case for independence. All I ask of those who oppose that vision is that they also act with the same courtesy and respect. That means independence is not a reason for them to refuse to work with us to build the economy, to support jobs and to improve the health service. If elected as First Minister, my focus will be the economy, jobs, the cost of living. It will be the National Health Service, our schools and our public services. It will be addressing the climate crisis. So to everyone in every party, to every MSP, to every MP, in fact to everyone in our great country, I say this: join me. Don't let our disagreements dominate. Join me as we open a new chapter, as we create a vibrant economy in every part of our country, as we tackle the challenges faced by the NHS, as we build on the strengths in our schools, as we build more homes, take climate action, improve public transport and create jobs. That's my job. That's our job. And I plan to get the job done. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. Folks, we'll now move on to some questions from the media, and I'm looking to see where they are. There they are. So we'll take James Cook from the BBC first. James.
Thanks very much, Mr. Swinney. I've watched you for many years from the press gallery in Holyrood, barracking your opponents, giving them a hard time, shouting at them. Do you take some responsibility, personally, for the polarisation of politics which you have described?
I've obviously contributed to that, James. Yes, of course I have. And I look at politics today, and I think politics is in the worst state I've ever seen it in my lengthy involvement in politics. So I'm here to do something about that, to change that, so we can have an open and honest and respectful dialogue in Scotland about what the future holds for us, what the future should be. And I'm very clear what I think the future should be. I'm also equally clear I won't get that by shouting at people. I'll get that by persuading people. And that's what I'm committing myself to do. Now, of course, you will all be able to observe. You've all heard these words. You'll be able to hold me to what I've said today, but I intend to stick with it. Right. STV.
Hi, Vanessa.
Right. Vanessa, there you are. Hello, Vanessa.
Many of your predecessors have tried and failed to deliver independence. What makes you think that you are going to be the First Minister and leader of your party that will do that?
I think the position we're in just now is that support for independence is at a stronger level than it was in the referendum in 2014. So we've got many, many more people believe in independence. And I recognise, as I've said over the course of the last few days, there needs to be greater levels of support for independence to make that a compelling proposition that can be delivered within Scotland. So the work of persuasion is necessary. It's an essential requirement to win people over to the arguments for independence, to see why independence is the solution to avoiding the real difficulties people are wrestling with just now in the cost of living crisis, or to address, for the businesses I speak to, the huge impediments in their business activity from Brexit. So we've got to persuade people that independence represents that best solution. And I think of all the things that I'm perhaps most renowned for, is that I'm a persuader. I believe in engaged persuasion and dialogue in Scotland, and that's why I think I've got the strengths and the capabilities to do it. But there's also something else. At this moment, The Scottish National Party needs to be brought back together, and that's what is my strength. And the fact that party members have decided that I should be the candidate, the sole candidate to come forward with party leadership, I'm going to make no apology for that. I think it's wonderful that party members say, we want John Swinney to, well, nurture us on this journey, steward us as we go on this journey together. It's an enormous privilege for me to take forward, and I'm looking forward to it enormously. David Hayes.
Mr Swinney, are you a change candidate, or are you about continuity? And if it is about change, what has Humza Yousaf been getting wrong?
Well, I'm looking forward, David. I'm looking forward to everything. I'm looking forward to being SNP leader. I'm looking forward to hopefully parliamentary support tomorrow to become the First Minister of my country, and I'm looking forward to leading a government that will change lives. So I'm looking forward. I'm not looking back. I'm looking forward. And in terms of, I don't think I could have been clearer in all I've said in the last few days, that I recognise things have got to change. We've got to do things differently. We've got to behave differently towards other political parties. We've got to behave differently within Parliament. We've got to behave differently with the people of Scotland to find the solutions to the complex, difficult problems that we face in our society today. And I'm ready to embrace that challenge. Conor Gillis.
First of all, congratulations, John Swinney. You said in your speech there that you will properly listen to members. Is that an admission that Nicola Sturgeon and Humza Yousaf failed in that mission? And just secondly, if you don't mind, you mentioned Kate Forbes there. Is she the person in this government that you will lead with all of the authority and none of the responsibility?
In terms of the point about engaging with the party, I made clear in my comments, I've had a lengthy involvement in the Scottish National Party. I started off as the custodian of the party's internal democracy. I know how it's run and how it should be run. I held the office that Lorna now holds many years ago with great pride. So I know how internal democracy in the party should operate and how we can have proper discussions where we engage people in addressing the difficult issues that we face, the complex policy challenges that we face, and how we talk through arriving at a solution. Because once you do that, then people will accept that you've had a good process of discussion and agreement. So that's what people will get from me in the period going forward. And in relation to Kate Forbes, well, I want to make sure that I have a strong team that is able to lead the Scottish Government. I have made it very clear that Kate will have a big role to play in that, she'll, along with many other people. So we'll all be individually and collectively responsible for the prospects of the SNP Government, for the Scottish National Party and for the country. And that's a great privilege, and we'll all share it. Right, who else? Yes.
Lucia Walker, Channel 4 News. John, congratulations.
Thank you.
A lot has changed since 2021. Now that you've been crowned the new leader of the SNP and likely to be the First Minister, don't you think an election is a democratic imperative? To put that into context, you could put down a motion and ask for one, and Labour would back you. Isn't that a democratic thing to do?
No, we operate in a fixed-term parliament. There's a 5-year parliamentary term. The public go to the polls, they elect members of parliament. We sit for a 5-year period, and the arrangements of the Scottish Parliament envisage that there can be changes of leadership during that period of time. So I think the right and proper thing to do is to follow the rules of our parliament and to ensure that we follow the democratic decisions of people in 2021. We navigate our way through the Parliament, and crucially, that all parties work together for common good.
John, the reason I asked you that is because when Liz Truss stepped down, Nicola Sturgeon said it was a democratic imperative to call a general election. And it was a call because the Tories were crowning new leaders. So is it not a democratic imperative? Was she wrong?
I think the issue that Nicola Sturgeon was raising at the end of the Liz Truss administration was that the economy had been completely and utterly trashed by the madness of Liz Truss. So, for me, That's what the problem was. The country had been wrecked by that madness, which of course I would just point out the Scottish Conservatives wanted me to follow right in her footsteps, which thankfully I did not do. But that was the democratic imperative. That the people of this country today are paying the price for Liz Truss's economic mistakes, in higher mortgage payments, in higher interest rates, in the fueling of the cost of living crisis. That's why we needed a change of government at that particular moment. Right, who's next? Jean Davidson.
Thanks, John. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can I ask you about your relationship going forward with the Scottish Greens? You've said today that you obviously want to work across all parties. Patrick Harvey today said that his party remains utterly committed to policies such as better rights for tenants and rent controls, transforming the way we heat homes, and a watertight ban on conversion therapy. Are these issues to which you will remain committed to as well?
I'm sure there'll be a lot of common ground between ourselves and the Scottish Green Party. We've worked very collaboratively in the course of the last couple of years in the Scottish Parliament and in the Scottish Government. And as I say, I want to work with all members of Parliament to chart the future of Scotland and to do that in a collaborative and cooperative way. I don't intend to return to a Butte House agreement. I don't intend to return to the type of fixed arrangements that we had. We'll take it on an issue-by-issue basis, which means that on some issues, I'm sure we will be aligned with the Scottish Green Party, but I'm sure on other issues we'll have to find support and agreement with other political parties. We're in a situation where we will be operating in minority government, and it's important that we find common cause where we can find that on the issues that matter. I think in terms of the question, I've seen some other, some commentary about the political positioning of the government. Again, last week I set out that I will lead a government from the centre-left position in Scottish politics, the moderate centre-left. That's where I come from, that's where my party's policy base is, and that's how we'll take forward our policy programme. Right, who's next? Yes, Neil.
Thanks, John. You've spoken about how you want to convince more people to support independence. Is there a threshold for what you think support should be in terms of the yes-no question before IndyRef 2 should go ahead?
I think what the point I'm making is that I think we've got to spend a lot more time talking about the persuasion of people and the arguments for independence rather than the process questions that have absorbed a huge amount of consideration in this discussion. Because I think when people think about, let's take the cost of living crisis, when they think through why are we experiencing this cost of living crisis, it is plain as a pikestaff to me that that is because of decisions taken by the Westminster Government that have been damaging to the economic and social well-being of people in Scotland. That's what the discussion has got to be about, to say to people, if we want to avoid these type of situations happening again, we have to have the powers of a normal independent country to do that. That's the arguments about persuasion, and I look forward to making those points to the people of Scotland. Now, who's next? Keir, please.
Thanks, John Swinney, and congratulations. You are now leader of the SNP. You'll be First Minister probably tomorrow. You've talked a lot about bringing in ideas. I just wondered, what is your one big policy idea that you will now put forward now you're leader of the country?
Well, my principal policy interest, the thing I'm determined to do, is to eradicate child poverty in Scotland. That will be, observe what we do in the period going forward. Because if I have the privilege to be selected as First Minister tomorrow, I will start focusing the government on maximising what we can do within our powers to eradicate child poverty. It is a curse, and under my leadership, I want to eradicate it in Scotland. Dan.
Thanks, John. Congratulations. Keir Forbes has said that in response to the last SNP budget, that continually increasing taxes is counterproductive because it ultimately reduces public revenue. I just wonder if you share her analysis. Apparently, the progressive taxation might have gone too far, and as part of the move back to the centre, which you've spoken about, would you look at perhaps cutting income tax in future budgets? Thank you.
you'll forgive me if I don't craft the Scottish Government's budget at this podium this afternoon. I think that would be just a bit on the rash side of things, even for me. I think there's a crucial word in the question you put to me there, Dan, that was coming from Kate's point of view, which is, or Kate's comments, is the word continually. Because continually you cannot keep on increasing taxation. You've got to make the right tax judgments in the right context and the right circumstances. And that's what I think the Scottish Government has done, because what we've done is use the powers which were acquired through the Smith Commission, which I was very much instrumental in securing for the Parliament, to enable us to get to a position where people who are on higher incomes are able to make more of a contribution to the public finances. We can lower the burden for those at lower ends of the spectrum, but that everybody benefits from the social contract that we make available to people in Scotland. So somebody who's on a high income in Scotland will be able, if their child comes to this university, to come here without paying tuition fees. That's a huge benefit to people within our country, and that's available to people whether you're in a low-income household or a high-income household. The difference, of course, is that you pay more in, reflecting your income. So these are some of the sensitive judgments we've got to make. But what I'm certain about is that the effect of that's been speculated about the tax changes that have been made in Scotland, as the evidence is now showing, have not substantiated the opposition taunts that have been set out in this respect, and that actually more people are coming to Scotland as contributors to our economy than are leaving Scotland as contributors to our economy. And I think that gives you the evidence you need about the effect of tax changes within Scotland. Libby Brooks.
Thank you, and congratulations again. Why do you think it is that the polls are showing that independent supporters are becoming less likely to support the SNP?
I think the SNPs are having a tough, rough time. It's lacked cohesion. I think that's come across to members of the public, and they're worried about where we are as a party. But interestingly, and the great feedback I get from my experienced peers around the country, in the last couple of days, some of my very wise colleagues have been out and about in our communities. And one colleague sent me a message the other day saying they were worried about how the SNP was getting on, but they were glad to see we're getting our act together. Well, we've got our act together this afternoon, and believe you me, we'll get our act together tomorrow, the day after, the day after that. And Libby, I take the view that if somebody's an independent supporter in Scotland and they want Scotland to be independent, there's only one political party that will ever deliver, and that's the Scottish National Party. So I want to earn those votes back. I want to, and I need to, earn those votes back. If there's some disaffection between people who support independence, who previously voted for the SNP, I will be working very, very hard to win those people back. Yes?
John, can I ask, will there be a role for Humza Yousaf in your cabinet? And if not, do you expect to see him return to a ministerial role in the future?
I think I'm not going to go into details about my ministerial appointments today. You'll understand there's a sequence of events to go through, and we'll get round to all of that. But what I will say is that I do think Humza Yousaf has got a significant contribution to continue to make to Scottish politics, and I will welcome that. I think some of the steps that Humza has taken have been courageous and dignified, full of grace, and these are attributes that I think the Scottish National Party would benefit from seeing more of. Right. Take this gentleman here.
Mark Howell from the Daily Mail. You've inherited a number of matters from your predecessor as SNP Leader, and among those is an outstanding loan of £60,000 know of that fund, and will it be paid back on your watch?
Well, I think we're getting into territory that I think we all know I can't speak about for obvious reasons, so I'll not be speaking about it today. Right, last question will be over, we'll have this one over here, and then, oh, I see we've got much more hands. You're all very sheepish about putting your hands up. Right, we'll take this one here, and then we'll come to a couple more.
Thanks very much. You've talked about reaching out to unionist parties, but do you really expect there to be some sort of consensus in a very hostile parliament? And there's a lot of policies that the Scottish Government is in the middle of bringing through, such as the heating buildings and lots of other things. Is your default position to continue with those, or do you want to take a pause and have a look at some of these key policies that maybe you wanted to shift more if you are trying to reclaim that sort of centre ground?
Well, what I want to do is to make sure that we progress on the moderate centre-left agenda that I think is important for Scotland to progress on. So there's a lot of policy proposals in front of the Parliament just now which are essential to advancing that agenda, and we'll work collaboratively to get some of those through. Now, if some of them are coming up against resistance or opposition, then we'll be able to have discussions about that. I see one of my colleagues is here, Natalie Dawn. I was talking about her on the television yesterday. Natalie's just taken a very complex bill through the Scottish Parliament to keep the promise. But she's managed to find agreement with Labour and Liberal members as those proposals have gone through Parliament. That's exactly what we should be doing. Because the onus is not just on the government. We're a Parliament. We've got to get to points of agreement to make things happen. So I'm setting out a willingness to work with other people today. I hope that's reciprocated. You will all be able to observe whether it's reciprocated or not. And I suppose my core point is the Parliament doesn't have to be polarised. There's bound to be things can be done if there's goodwill. Now, I accept if there's no goodwill, then it gets a bit more tricky, but I don't see why there's a reason why there shouldn't be goodwill to make progress on those issues. Stuart Patterson.
Thank you. You said your focus will be on the economy, jobs, health, schools and public services. In this city, the council is facing £107 million worth of cuts over the next 3 years. That includes, reportedly, 450 teachers' jobs will be lost, 150 social work related posts. Do you recognise, if you're going to achieve those aims, that you'll need to reform how local authorities like Glasgow are funded to allow them to provide services that people rely on?
I quite accept that there is enormous financial pressure on public services and public bodies, and particularly on our local authorities. There's pressure on the public finances in every area of government activity. That is because we have been subjected to 14 years of austerity from the United Kingdom government. Now, in my answer to one of the other earlier questions about tax, we've taken steps to increase the resources that are available for public expenditure in Scotland. If the tax changes that the SNP government, if we hadn't put through those tax changes, there would be over £1 billion less in public expenditure this year. So we've recognised the need to invest in public services. That's enabled us to give more money to local authorities than we ordinarily would have been able to give had we not taken those decisions. But the underlying problem is austerity from the Tory government in Westminster. And I'm not optimistic that the parameters of that austerity are going to change much if there's the election of a Labour government sometime later on this year. So we've got to work effectively with our local authorities, and we will do that to create ways in which local authorities are able to maximise their resources. We've got a visitor levy bill going through the Parliament just now, which will give the option to local authorities to put on a visitor levy, which might increase would increase the resources available to local authorities. So there's lots of ways in which we can engage constructively with local government, and I look forward to leading that process within the government. Now, I'm going to take 2 last questions, and then we'll have to round up. So the chap down in the white shirt, and then Andrew Lermouth will be last.
Lewis Mackenzie from the Scottish Sun. Can I ask if you accept the findings of the cash review, and if you enter government, will you implement its recommendations?
I think the cash review has got to be taken extremely seriously. It's a substantial evidence-based proposal. It's been considered by government and also by clinicians. And crucially for me, clinical opinion is essential on these questions. So the government will take a rational, evidence-based approach to the consideration of the cash review, drawing on the opinions and the evidence put to us by clinicians, because on matters of such sensitivity about the well-being of children and young people, we should listen to clinicians as we take forward those arguments. Right. Andrew, you're last.
Thanks, John. Congratulations. Both your predecessors in their respective resignation speeches talked about the brutality of politics and the toll it took on their mental health. Why are you putting yourself through this?
Well, there's the, maybe we should have got to that question a bit sooner in this process than the last question. I recognise, it's funny what you don't always see things as obviously as you might think. But last year when I stood down as a long-serving minister, 16 years as a minister, I didn't realise how physically and emotionally exhausted I was, because I was just going at 100 miles an hour all the time. And when I stopped, I became aware how physically and mentally exhausted I was. So, although I've worked hard, you've even written an article about how I worked hard in a committee of the Scottish Parliament, which I was very appreciative of you, those nice words that you wrote about me there. Although I've been doing different things, so today I'm now physically and mentally rested and ready for what lies ahead. And I can't tell you, I hope I've made clear to you today how much of a privilege and an honour it is to be asked to be leader of my party, and tomorrow to hopefully be elected as the First Minister of Scotland. And that inspiration and that opportunity will fuel me through the challenges that lie ahead. Thank you all very much.